I wasn't sure.
Oh, wait, I saw his car.
There you go. 45 minutes ago. So
Must have forgot something.
he's here. For all the people here.
Hey,
I've stepped off the curb and they're still going, yeah.
What? Everything is down. Better than UNC too? Yeah. And then DU is behind CSU and CSU.
You have to yield before the snow. I mean, there's a lot of trust in that, you know. I was there,
I have a sister-in-law that graduated from CSU. So every time I see him, it's
see who's had more money, what's cool.
yeah.
Good afternoon. Today is August the 8th, 2018. Special meeting of the City Council of City of Trinidad will now come to order. We have two items for consideration of the City Council. Item number one is a public hearing ethics complaint filed by Council Member Rusty Goodall against Mayor Rico. And item two, public hearing ethics complaint filed by Council Member Joe Bonato against Mayor Rico. We'll take item one and I'll turn it over to Pro Tem Michelle Miles at this time.
Great, I think you need to call the Board of Ethics.
Okay. Do we need a roll call first? Should we get a roll call? Let's get a roll call, please.
Donato.
Here.
Goodall.
Here.
Griego.
Here.
Lopez.
Here.
Matei.
Here.
Miles.
Here.
Rico.
Here.
And Mayor and council members, if I could please, I have given all of you a procedural outline for each of the complaints. What I propose doing initially, before Mayor Pro Tem Miles takes over, is there are three people who are going to be recused in each of the hearings, and I would suggest that you sit in the front row. You absolutely are allowed to participate, especially the complaining party, the party complained against, and the witnesses. You're allowed to hear everything. So, and in fact, it's necessary that you hear everything. So, I would recommend that when you do, and in this first complaint, of course, it's going to be Councilman Goodall and Lopez and the mayor. So, I would just suggest that you have a seat in the front row. And then Mayor Pro Tem Miles is going to preside and call the meeting to order. If that makes sense.
I think we need more space up front.
Right.
I can sit in the second row.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you can hear us.
Yeah. All right. It's today is August 8th. It is 3:32, and I'd like to call to order the meeting for the City of Trinidad Board of Ethics. I'll be the presiding officer today, and I think Les, you're going to run us through the procedure and guide us every step of the way. So
I will. And if we could, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay, if we could please now have Councilman Goodall, Councilman Lopez, and Mayor Rico step down from the dais.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, good.
I'm getting old at that. Good evening. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Jones.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Miles. The procedure, and I again have given each of you a written copy of this, and I would like to read this to you so that it is a matter of record. And of course, the first matter before you is the Goodall complaint. The Mayor Pro Tem Miles is presiding. Non-disqualified members of council, Councilwoman Miles and Griego, Councilman Matei and Bonato remain at the dais. The mayor, Councilman Lopez, and Councilman Goodall will have a seat in the audience. For the record, that has been done. I will read the complaint again. I will do that in a moment. I know that the complaint has been read previously, but I will read it again. It is appropriate to read the complaint to begin the hearing. Mayor Pro Tem Miles will ask the mayor, after the complaint is reread, if he understands the complaint. Mayor Pro Tem Miles should then ask him if he admits or denies the complaint. If the mayor denies, then we proceed to hearing. The burden of proof is upon the complaining party. That, of course, is Councilman Goodall. To prevail, the complaining party must prove his or her complaint by a preponderance of the evidence. Excuse me. I don't believe it is necessary to begin with opening statements. Opening statements should be dispensed with. All witnesses should be sworn in. Councilman Goodall will begin. If he is going to be his first witness, he will make a statement. That will be essentially the same as his testimony, but he will make a statement in support of his complaint. He must confine himself to the facts. If he or any other witness starts to make an argument, I will respectfully object, and Mayor Pro Tem Miles will issue a ruling on the objection. This isn't in my written outline, but the only time I will object is if a party or a witness either starts to make an argument or is getting what I think is irrelevant. And again, if I make an objection, then they can respond and you can rule as the presiding officer. Note, during the proceedings, parties and witnesses should only address counsel and not address each other. Additional note, if the parties have exhibits, they should introduce them while presenting their case. When Councilman Goodall is done with his statement, also that being his testimony, the mayor can ask questions or cross-examine him. Council members may ask questions of the witness when the mayor is done with his questioning. When council is done asking questions, he may call his next witness if he has one. It is anticipated that Councilman Lopez will be a witness for Councilman Goodall. The same procedure should be utilized as above. He can first make a statement, and Councilman Goodall can ask him questions since Councilman Lopez is his witness. The mayor can cross-examine, and council can ask questions. When Councilman Goodall is done with a presentation of his case, the mayor will proceed. He will adhere to the same procedure as above for himself and any other witnesses that he may have. That is, the mayor will give a statement as to his testimony, be cross-examined by Councilman Goodall, and he can be questioned by council. If he has other witnesses, the mayor may call them. When the mayor is done presenting his case, the party should make closing arguments. Councilman Goodall should go first since he has the burden of proof, then the mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Miles will close the evidentiary part of the hearing. She should call for a motion, and that motion can be either to find that the complaint has been proven by a preponderance of the evidence, or a motion to dismiss the complaint because it hasn't been proven. Whatever motion is made is up to the moving party. Whatever motion is made, if there is a second, there should be discussion. There, of course, are only 4 of you for each hearing, so anything must have a 3-to-1 vote to prevail. If the complaint is proven, council should decide what sanction to impose. Any questions about that? Okay, and obviously if the complaint is not proven, then you don't need to have that discussion. Any questions from the parties? Okay. So,
You're gonna read the complaint.
I will. Ethics complaint. City Council member Rusty Goodall complains and asserts as follows regarding this complaint in ethics against Mayor Phil Rico. This complaint is made according to section 2-71, subparagraph 4, subparagraph 4 of the Trinidad Municipal Code. I swear or affirm that the following facts are true and are based on my personal knowledge. Trinidad City Councilman Carlos Lopez was a candidate for the Executive Board of Directors for the Colorado Municipal League at the annual conference for the league at the June 2018 conference in Vail, Colorado. The election for this board is held every year at conference to fill the vacancies that occur each year. It was a well-known fact in the Trinidad City Council that Councilman Lopez was a candidate for the CML Executive Board. The members of City Council that attended the CML conference for 2018 were Mayor Phil Rico, Councilman Carlos Lopez, and myself, Councilman Rusty Goodall. The Trinidad City Council had stated its support for Councilman Lopez as a candidate for the CML Executive Board. It was understood that Trinidad's vote would be made for Councilman Lopez. The election for the CML Board was held on June 21st, 2018 in Vail at approximately 2:15 p.m. All attendees of the conference knew when and where the election was going to be held. Member municipalities of CML all participate in the conference and in the election. Councilman Lopez and I thought that the casting of our vote was going to be very easy and uncomplicated. When we found the mayor at the place of the election, he had already obtained a ballot and had filled the ballot out without involving Councilman Lopez or myself. Councilman Lopez and I were very surprised that the mayor had already voted and had done so without involving us. I then asked to see our ballot to make sure that he had complied with the wishes of City Council in voting for Councilman Lopez and to make sure he had voted for Councilman Lopez. The mayor refused to show either of us the ballot he had filled out, telling us that he was on the policy committee for CML and that they had appointed him to vote on behalf of Trinidad. I was not happy with this information, so I right away went and found Sam Mamet, the executive director of CML, and asked him his opinion about this. He told me that the governing body for Trinidad appoints a person to vote for Trinidad, or if that isn't done, to have a majority of council members present decide who we would vote for. In other words, what the mayor told me was false. So the mayor cast our ballot without us having a say in the voting or who we would vote for, and without showing us who he had voted for. The mayor deprived us of our being able to participate in the process or to make sure we knew who we were voting for and that our vote was cast for Councilman Lopez. In hiding the vote from us, he kept us in the dark as to who he or we had actually voted for, and I have serious doubts as to if he voted for Councilman Lopez. The mayor's conduct violated the Trinidad Code of Ethics, section number 4 of section 2-71 of the Code of Ordinances, quote, speak with one voice, end of quote. That ordinance clearly states that each member of council should, quote, objectively present the council's collective decision or direction, even when you may not agree, end of quote. Also, the mayor has been asked by council before to not act on his own, and he has been previously warned by council regarding this. The mayor too often acts without the consent of council or acts in his official capacity in matters that he doesn't make us aware of. In this instance, the mayor voted without involving Councilman Lopez and myself, kept the vote, that's a typo, but kept the vote secret, and treated the ballot in the vote like it was his own function to perform, instead of including us and making sure we were involved in that decision. It is possible that the mayor did not vote for Councilman Lopez for the Executive Board of Directors for CML, and since he refused to show either Councilman Lopez or myself the ballot that was cast. Attached to his complaint are Appendix A and Appendix B of the CML bylaws. Appendix A states that each vote cast by each participating member municipality in an election vote should be made by the city's representative or by a majority of the representative attending the meeting. Since the city of Trinidad did not designate a representative, it should have been by the majority of the members present. Appendix B repeats this, but it applies to voting, it applies there to voting rules for business meetings of CML, signed and notarized by Rusty Goodall. So, you should ask the mayor if he understands
Yes.
the complaint.
What else say? Mayor Rico, do you understand the complaint? And do you deny it or admit it?
Deny it, and I do understand the complaint.
All right, then we go to hearing.
Correct. So Councilman Goodall now will begin, and if we could please have all three witnesses sworn in. I'm assuming you were the three witnesses, is that correct? Okay. So we could please have all three people administer the oath of office.
Do you swear to tell the testimony to be the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
And Councilman Goodall,
So just,
please. And you can make a statement, but this is your sworn testimony.
All right, I don't have a statement. I'd like to just go forward with calling the witness. At this time, I'd like to call Mayor Rico, if I may.
You can call the mayor.
All right.
Okay. So, Mayor, why don't you sit, Kimberly, do you mind scooting down? I think that's the best. Sorry about that.
So Mayor Rico, you do recall us attending the CML board meeting in the elections?
Yes, I do.
You recall me, you and Councilman Lopez at the table when the ballots were being passed?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall informing me and Councilman Lopez that you were on the policy committee and that is who give you the right to vote?
That is correct.
So then is it fair for me to assume that you do know what the CML's policy for voting for a municipality is?
I did not know the complete statute of the whole thing until later that day.
So you're
Because the
gonna,
thing about it is I'll deny that simply because it has never been shown to me what the actual procedure was, and I'll explain that when I do my part of it.
so what you're saying is even though you're on the policy committee, that before casting a vote, you would not make yourself aware of the rules for voting and speaking for the people of Trinidad?
Well, you know, the thing about it is, like I said, I was on the policy committee since last year, and I assumed that I was the voting member.
All right, I have no further questions. I'll call Councilman Lopez at this time.
Okay.
So again, Councilman Lopez, do you recall being at the CML conference in Vail and being at the table with myself and Mayor Rico when the ballots were cast?
I do.
So do you recall me and you asking Mayor Rico to see the ballot?
I do.
And would you please share with us his comments at that time?
He stated, and I might be paraphrasing, but he said, "I want to keep this one to myself."
Okay. Did he elaborate any further on that?
No, he did not.
All right. I have no further questions.
Mayor, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Does
One
council?
question I do have for you, sure. Did I not ask, lean over to you and mention to you that I was going to vote for you?
You did the night before.
No, that's while we were sitting at the table.
I don't recall that. I remember that the night before at
You
the
were
social.
sitting, you were sitting right next to me, and I leaned over and asked.
Can
Yeah,
you
Mayor,
repeat
that's
the question? I didn't hear it. There was a
The question was,
Maybe you should go to the podium.
So we could hear it. Yes.
when we were sitting there, all three of us together, he was sitting right next to me. And I leaned over and I mentioned to him that I would cast my vote for him.
And that really is more for the testimony of the mayor when he testifies. Any other questions of Councilman Lopez? No other questions?
No questions.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I have a question of Councilman Goodall.
Okay,
that
Councilman
possible?
Goodall has not given his testimony yet. Right, I'm assuming that he is going to testify. It's his decision how to present witnesses. So if you have nothing further of Mayor Rico, well, if you have nothing further of Councilman Lopez, okay, thank you, Mayor, you can be seated. Then you can question Councilman Lopez.
No, I have no questions for Councilman.
Okay.
So if that's the end, are you going to testify?
So I will give my testimony at this time. So I need to be based on facts, not argumentative, so I'll try and tiptoe through this. So it is my testimony that when we set the table to cast a vote, even though City Council, when preceding us going to the CML conference, we passed a letter of support for Councilman Lopez, even though City Council did not at that time express to the mayor that we were to vote for Councilman Lopez. It is my argument that we had 4 signatures done at the vote here that night in support of Councilman Lopez, and that vote should have been cast. By not sharing this vote with us, and we have no way of ever finding out if the wishes of City Council were followed through to vote for Councilman Lopez. And I think that's important, that his support with the letter being signed should have been given. I do not believe that the mayor followed the rules, and with casting a vote for the city of Trinidad, I think it's imperative that you make yourself aware of what the rules are and you follow those rules. That being that, as an officer will tell you when you were pulled over, an ignorance to the law is no defense. He's representing not just this city council, he is representing between 8 and 9,000 people's voices within this town. It's important that we make sure that the voice of the people are representative and not one individual, which is what I believe happened at the CML conference. That's my testimony.
Council, Mr.
I have no
McKay, you have any
question.
questions?
I do not.
I have a couple of questions, Rusty. On the complaint that you submitted to council, I noticed the first page is a different font than the second page, and then the statement or the request that you made to continue isn't in the same verbiage. And I just need verification from you that you were the sole author of this complaint.
I am the sole author of that complaint, and I'm sorry that my computer skills are not that great, so when I went back to make corrections and retype the thing, I didn't even pay attention that it was in a different font when I removed some stuff that I had originally put on the first one.
I have another question. Did you or Councilman Lopez go back to the executive director of CML to ask if there was any way you could rectify what you felt was an injustice by Mayor Rico?
So there is no markings of any type on any ballot that identifies a ballot with any municipality. So when Mr. Mamet was contacted to ask if we could get that ballot, he said there's no way to know which ballot was ours.
Was there any way for you to ask the executive director if you felt that you had been wronged and you wanted to redo did you proceed further than just asking if you could retrieve the mayor's ballot?
I did not at that time ask Mr. Mamet, and at that point there would be no way for them to go into the ballots to pull the ballot and correct the measure because there was no markings on the ballots to identify it.
Were you aware of the procedure for voting prior to your...
So I found out at the CML what the procedures were.
Before
I did
or
not.
after the vote?
After the mayor would not show us the vote.
That's all I have.
Mr. Bernardo?
I'm not.
May,
Absolutely.
sorry for the
That's okay, that's
interference
fine.
with order. What was your expectation in going to the convention, and what did you think was going to happen?
So my full intention of when I attended the CML conference was, of course, the classes and to be educated.
Relative to the vote, to this vote.
Oh, just to the
Yeah.
vote.
Relative to this vote, what did you think would happen?
So I believed that when we went in that there would be a ballot. I didn't know exactly how it would be cast. So I spent time along with Councilman Lopez looking at the ballots, who was from each of the areas, because you have under a
Right.
but whatever how many groups. Then I took the time to go and meet the candidates in each one of those groups, and to just to ask questions and try to get a feel of how this all worked and what their beliefs were, what you do with any candidate for any election. And then that's why I was disappointed when we went to the election, that the time I had spent getting to know the candidates and making a list of who I would vote for, thinking that I would be part of this process, did not happen.
Did you and Councilman Lopez and Mayor Rico collectively discuss a vote?
No. He asked us for no opinion and said that was for him to do.
He took, okay, thank you.
He took the ballot, he signed for the ballot, took the ballot, and then once the vote was cast, would not share that.
Were you present when the ballot was in the mayor's possession?
Yes, I was. And the mayor did show me the ballot before any votes were cast, and we looked at it. We were waiting on Councilman Lopez at that time. I returned the ballot to look. I just went over who I had talked with, looked on the ballots, final notes, and returned the ballot to the mayor. Once Councilman Lopez joined us, the mayor had filled out the ballot. That's when we asked to see the ballot again, and he said that was for him to do.
Okay, if I understand what you have just said,
Yes.
the ballot, unmarked, was in your collective possession, you, Councilman Lopez, and the mayor?
No, me and the mayor.
You and the mayor?
That was
Okay.
before Councilman Lopez had arrived.
And when Councilman Lopez arrived, the mayor had already marked the ballot?
Yes, he had.
Okay, and then after that, the three of you discussed how that vote was cast?
We asked to see the ballot, and he said he had cast it. And then at that point, they call for, the way the election works, they call for the ballots, they come around and collect them, count the votes, and then come back. In case of a tie, there's an alternate ballot there in place. And there was a tie, and the mayor also cast that ballot to break a tie in a different in a different population group.
Okay.
And again, we were not part of that vote casting either.
I can, having never been there, I would imagine it to be a rather cumbersome experience with as many people as are represented from all the municipalities throughout the state.
There were
Is that accurate?
72 municipalities there that day casting ballots, yes.
Thank you.
All right, I have some questions. Were there a number of members of the community at the CML,
From our community?
other than council members?
Mr. Downs was there, I had seen.
Right, somebody. I'm talking
Oh,
about
just
the broader
from,
community.
no.
No.
And I don't
Wouldn't
recall,
expect there would be.
right, I didn't recall seeing anyone that was no badges from any, other than my wife was there representing, on behalf of Trinidad. I didn't see many
I
people,
wouldn't expect there to be broad.
and also our city manager's wife was there. But other than that, I didn't notice a lot of people that were not officials.
Would you do me a favor and read, am I allowed to do this?
Sure.
The speak with one voice section, do you have it with you?
I do
And the
not.
entire thing, but I'll give it to you. I think I have it highlighted on the side.
Speak with one voice. Council members will frequently be asked to explain a council actions or to give their opinion about an issue as they meet and talk with constituents in the community. It is appropriate to give a brief overview of the facts or city policies as they relate to council actions. Objectively, present the council's collective decision or direction even when you may not agree. If you feel the need to express your own opinion or direction, state in terms such as, I would have preferred, but the council wanted. So that's what we will be doing, explaining council's decisions without giving your personal criticism on the council's actions will serve to strengthen the community's image of the city council.
Right. Would you agree that that addresses the city's image within the community? And that it talks about the fact that if you're a dissenting vote on something that, well, I shouldn't be drawing conclusions, but that has to do with the community and the image of council in the community.
Correct.
And if you're outvoted, you've got to row with the same oar.
Correct.
Doesn't mean you all have to agree, but it's the image in the community.
Correct.
It's talking with members of the community.
Correct.
But you have a responsibility to do that after a vote.
Yes.
Okay? You said that there were no members of the community at CML.
Correct.
So how does, I guess, I understand that this, I don't want to get into conclusions now, but how do you allege that what the mayor's action did violated this provision if it has to do with the community?
So each of us are also members of this community, even though we're elected officials. We have 7 people on this council. And if 4 members of this council, which is the majority of the 7, sign a letter of support for Councilman Lopez, how is that not a majority?
That's not what that provision says. What it says is when you're talking to the community and you're explaining a council vote, you should not be critical of the vote. That's what that says. I was here when it was drafted.
Okay.
And it really came up around the marijuana thing.
Okay.
All right. So I don't see. All right. I don't see how an action that happened in Vail has anything to do with talking to our community.
I guess I'm not following. To me, speak with one voice means that the one voice is the majority of what council decides. Whether you're on the winning side or the pro or the con side of that.
If you read it carefully, it addresses your instructions for how you speak to our community, not how you cast votes.
Okay, but everything that you read is always open to interpretation. Your interpretation may not be the same as mine.
No, it is not subject to interpretation. If you read the paragraph and you parse the sentences, it has to do with how a city council member speaks to our community and represents a council vote.
Okay.
It's very clear I mean, would you like to show me where in that paragraph it says that the mayor votes in accordance with council's instructions? I mean, I don't recall ever giving an instruction.
Correct.
And
that's in the CML's policy.
exactly.
Correct.
I'm wondering if your complaint really isn't a violation of the CML bylaws. And your whole point about ignorance to the law, or bylaws, I guess, is no excuse. But it seems to me, and am I going on an okay path here, or am I getting into the next one?
It's kind of a legal discussion on factual, but you are.
Well, I guess I want to know.
Right.
If this is, what you're really alleging is a violation of the CML bylaws, or a violation of something giving instructions to council members as to how they talk within the community. If there were provision, perhaps there should be a provision in here that any council member shouldn't violate the CML bylaws. But anyway, I'll let you start.
All right. So, may I ask?
Yes.
So
I think this is kind of a discussion, so go
correct.
right ahead.
So, am I wrong to, when we speak with one voice, it is an interpretive voice for our community, which comes down to the 7 elected officials? Am I wrong in interpreting it this way?
Well, I'm not here to say who's right or who's wrong in terms of the legality of it.
Okay. So, what I will say to answer you, to me, when I read this, my interpretation is that we are 7 elected officials that represent this community. We are elected by the community. So when our decisions we make are a direct representation of the community, therefore when one of us speaks without a representation of the whole city council and on their own, then they are not speaking with one voice. That's my interpretation, regardless of what you're
All right,
saying.
I think I would encourage you to read the first sentence and the last sentence.
I did.
They both couch that it's when you talk in the community, not when you talk at CML. Okay? But anyway, Mr. Matei, you had a question?
Well, I have what I hope to be a clarifying comment and a question. Reading through the section that concerns itself with a code of ethics for public servants, the options available are: 1, conduct at meetings. The second one is to avoid personal comments that could offend other council members. The third is to be aware of the insecurity of written notes, voicemail messages, emails, that kind of stuff, so as to maintain proper integrity of information. The fourth is to speak with one voice, and the fifth is to be welcoming to speakers and treat them with care and respect. Those 5 rules apply as we meet and as you are proposing. I appreciate that. Okay? So I guess, given those 5 options, how did you choose to use this one? By virtue of your explanation and your understanding, I presume, is that correct?
Correct, from
Okay.
my
So
understanding.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, the specific behavior, as alleged by the complainant, really doesn't fall into the letter of item number 4, speaking with one voice. But in the myriad of options available, he was left with no other option but to choose the best of the worst for making his issue known. It's like there are specific traffic violations for each traffic offense, and when it doesn't fit someplace else, officers can rely on careless driving, which in a general sense is driving without due regard for the width, the grade, the curve, the roads, the use of the streets and highways, and all other attendant circumstances, meaning if it doesn't fit someplace else, it fits here. We don't have a careless driving violation in this list of missteps and misbehaviors on a part of any one of us. So I'm thinking you're choosing that which most applies
Yes.
to what your concerns are. And that in making this opinion and asking Mr. Goodall's affirmation of that thought, I think a certain amount of latitude is necessary.
Can I respond to that, or is
Of course.
that inappropriate?
Well,
I'm asking.
and before we, if I may interrupt, before we get too much farther along in the discussion, which I think we're going to now, I'd like to hear from the mayor.
Well, the mayor goes next, and if you have questions of the mayor, you can.
All right, something was said, and I just have a very specific response to it, which is, if I take an action, I'm going to use your analogy of the law,
Right,
and you somehow think it's wrong because it just seems unjust,
right.
you can't pin a law on me that doesn't apply.
Gotcha, I understand.
Okay, fair enough. And maybe you change the law.
No, point made.
So, and there will be closing remarks, but any other questions or any other responses of Councilman Goodall or by you, Councilman Goodall?
I have nothing else.
Okay. May he be seated. And is that all, that's all your witnesses?
That is.
Okay. So I believe it is the mayor's turn.
Thank you, members of council. You know, when we talk about ethics, the first thing that comes to mind is large improprieties. This charge does not relate to anything of that magnitude. I've got quite a bit here of information for you, and hopefully you will bear with me. This hearing comes at a great cost to us and to our community. It undermines the credibility of this council. It seeks to damage my credibility, and I must respond accordingly. It takes time away from staff, divides council, and most importantly, puts questions in the minds of our constituents. Every one of us on council wants to do what is in the best interest of our community. I question if this ethics filing is in that interest. Our job is to unify the community. This complaint does just the opposite. This is a communication issue, not an ethics issue. I have been asked to participate in many meetings during the last 2.5 years. The idea is to move this community forward. A major concern of this ethics charge has been heard at the state level from OEDIT, Dana Crawford, and Tim Schultz. Could this cause damage? We should not be settling these types of issues with ethics complaints. We have too much going on and too much to lose if the state begins to question what is happening in Trinidad after all the good things that we're accomplishing with state help.
Mayor, I'm sorry for interrupting. I would say that this is really more argument
Okay?
than it is your response to the facts.
Okay, well then the next is,
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a litany of items of what brought all this to be. This all began in the meeting of April 17, 2018. There was a letter that I had prepared in support of the Army at Fort Carson. The concern was that Fort Carson was attempting to get an armored brigade of approximately 800 troops.
What's that have to, Jeff, what's that have to do with this complaint here? This gotta be on the other ethical complaint, not this one here.
Well, this is a litany of all the
No,
information.
that has to go into
It
something
sounds like
else.
it may be the other complaint, Mayor.
I agree.
This is just.
Absolutely.
Okay? What it is, I just want to say I went under YouTube to listen to all this information. Go down here. Okay, let's go down to this. Let's go down to this part. On a different issue, this is all pertaining to CML now. On May the 2nd at 9:05 a.m. 2018, I received a text from Councilman Lopez informing me that KOAA TV will be here at noon to do a story regarding tactical weapon allocation.
How does this pertain to CML?
They would like, this will pertain to it as you go down as to the reasons why I voted and did not vote, or whether I did or did not vote.
Okay, I think,
That can't go here.
I'm not understanding the relevance. I think I know the text that you're talking about is what you're saying, that something happened that offended you?
Yes, but that was the reason why I did not sign the letter here at the beginning. It's all relevant in that
Okay,
case.
but I think we're confusing this with the Army.
but if I could.
No, let's leave the Army out of this at this point.
You brought it up.
Right,
Yes.
what I would like to say is, I don't believe that Councilman Goodall or Councilman Lopez went into that matter in their testimony. And so I would say that this being a response really to the complaints by them and the factual vermins by them, I don't think that really arose there. I know that was going to be a possibility, but I really don't think that issue arose. I think we're all at least somewhat aware of the prior, alleged text, but they didn't go into that, so I really don't think it's relevant.
Well, the thing about it, I'm arguing is that is just one part of that was one of the reasons why I did not sign his original letter of intent to go for the.
Okay.
I think you can fairly state, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a difference of opinion, that you did not sign the petition and for cause, which is normal.
I think the public has the right to know the reason why.
What petition are you talking about?
The one that denominates
The letter of support for
The
Carlos.
letter of support for Carlos.
I think he's right. I think you should let him testify to this. If he wants to paint a complete picture, I think the mayor should be allowed to do
All
that.
right, then I'm inclined to agree.
Okay. Okay, that they were KOAA TV will be here at noon to do a story regarding tactical weapon allocation. They would like input from City Council. I immediately returned his call informing him that I would like City Manager Gregson to do the interview. At 10:34 a.m., I received another text reading, "My mayor is such a pussy." I was taken by surprise at this text because I had not done anything to provoke such a text. He immediately sent another text saying, "I'm sorry, Phil." That was, and it's not a typo, not mine, a stupid mistake. I apologize. That was foolish of me to say to you. I apologize profusely. I was upset and stupid. I responded in a return text. I am extremely offended. I respect you and your opinions and never disrespected you. I can see what your true opinion of me is. He responded, I feel so ashamed that you have every right to be upset. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. I do respect you, Phil. I let my emotions get the best of me and it will never happen again. I am so sorry, end of text. He personally attacked me and denigrated the mayor's seat. Councilman Lopez violated Section 271 Code of Conduct, Code of Ethics, Section 2.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
You can file an ethics complaint, but not here.
So that's fine. Okay. I thought that would be the end of it. Councilman Lopez showed Council Goodall the text he sent to me. Councilman Goodall should have recognized that Lopez, the reason behind that. Councilman Goodall turned a blind eye to the fact. During the meeting in early June, Council was asked to sign a letter of intent for Councilman Lopez. He wanted to place his name on the ballot for a CML Board of Directors. I did not sign on the support letter. I had seen Councilman Lopez in a previous word section on April 17, 2018 of police weaponry. He became agitated when he was talking to the chief, and I asked him to calm his questioning. Those are the two reasons why I did not sign his letter of intent.
All right, you got to bring this back to the ethics complaint
Okay.
now at this point.
I questioned if he could hold his composure, discussion of the CMAL Board of Directors. On June the 22nd, Councilman Lopez, Goodall, and I attended the luncheon where voting was to take place for the new CML Board of Directors. I picked up Trinidad's ballot. In 2017, City Manager asked if anybody wanted to be the representative to the CML Policy Making Group. I volunteered, no other council person volunteered. I assumed I was Trinidad's representative. Sitting together, Councilman Goodall asked to see the ballot. I had not filled out the ballot, so I obliged. Shortly after, we were instructed to fill out our ballots. After filling out my ballot, Council Goodall asked to see my ballot again. I did not show it to him. Prior to my filling out my ballot, I leaned over to Councilman Lopez, who was sitting next to me, and I told him that I would cast my vote for him. This was Council's consensus. I was fulfilling my obligation to the City Council and to the community, speaking with one voice. The reason I did not show Councilman Goodall my ballot because there were other names on the ballot, and I've always thought ballots are also personal. Evidently, Councilman Goodall did not believe that I cast my vote for Councilman Lopez. The following week, I was informed that Councilman Goodall was filing an ethics charge against me. I immediately went to see him and explained my position. During our meeting, he said that he approached CML Director Sam Ammett and asked him about voting. When our meeting ended, he said he would let me know the following Tuesday after our council meeting if he was going to follow through with the filing. The next day, I called Kevin Bomber, who was one of the attorneys for CML. I asked if I had done anything wrong.
Mayor, I'm sorry, that's hearsay.
Okay?
And I think it also,
That person's not here to testify.
right,
to
and we
that.
don't know what all facts were given to Kevin.
I will have some information to
But
support.
he's not here to be questioned.
Right.
I
So you
think,
can't testify to what he said.
right.
Okay.
It's, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That's a hearsay.
Okay, let's go down this. I'll refer to Appendix B2, Section 2 of Article 2 of the CML bylaws. It reads, the vote of each participating member shall be cast by its representative or by a majority of its representatives attending. That or is a question in my mind. The meeting at which an election of executive board members or a decision or any proposition shall take place. Representative or representatives may vote on behalf of may not vote on more than one participating member. I assume that since I have been the attending CML policy meetings that I was the representative. The CML policy is not clear as to who the voting representative shall be or when the representative should be selected. The following Tuesday after our regular meeting, Councilman Goodall and I met in the conference room. He mentioned that he was following through with the complaint. I asked him to call Kevin Bomber before making his decision. He said he would and would let me know if he was going to follow through with his ethics complaint. He never did call Kevin.
I object.
Okay.
It's not relevant.
Okay. On July the 18th, I contacted Sam Ammett, and I'll submit this reference for your information. Matter of fact, one for you.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is what it reads. This is what I asked him. Okay, hi, Mayor. Per your okay, got your voicemail. Need a phone number to call you at CML, Sam. I said, I recently spoke to you about my voting for the board of directors. I asked if you were contacted by Councilman Goodall. You mentioned that he did, and you discussed other activities, not my vote or the voting process. This has become an issue. Can you email me if this is correct? In addition, I don't know if you can do this also. Is there a way to identify my vote for Carlos by my ballot? When I picked up a ballot to vote, there was a second ballot in case of a tie. I filled this out before we got instructions. In that second ballot, I mistakenly put one name, two names in each category. So that was the second kind of provisional ballot. My second ballot indicated that I had voted for Carlos in case of a tie vote. Fortunately, that tie vote for him never did come up, but it was listed on it. If possible, can you forward any of the information I'm asking for this email? If you cannot send me the information, but you can identify my vote, can you email that you have identified my ballot, stating that I did vote for Carlos? I would greatly appreciate it. It will clear up the issue. Thanks, Sam. This was his response. Hi, Mayor. Per your request, I spoke to Rusty just to say hi at the conference. We really did not discuss any of this, mostly how much I love the car museum. There is no way to identify ballots and who they belong to because no one signs their ballots. No requirement to do so. The ballots are just turned in and counted. The only sign-in is for the roster at the start of the business meeting. It is open as to how each voting municipality chose to vote. This is up to the city or town. Only one person can vote for a municipality. That is his response. So I'm saying Councilman Goodall was not truthful when he said he asked Sam Mamet. If I had not voted for Councilman Lopez, why would I have requested my ballot information from CML? I went on the word from Councilman Goodall that he would let me know he had contacted Kevin. He did not. When someone promised me something, I'll go on the word to be truthful. I asked Councilman Goodall if he had talked to Les about the issue. He said no, and that he had spoken to a friend attorney and did not consult with Les or any attorneys available to us, CML or CIRSA, because he did not feel comfortable with the answer he might be given. Should he have asked for permission from council or from Les or asked for...
This is hearsay and not true also.
Okay. I just mentioned him, it was not advisable.
Yeah,
We're getting
really,
way off.
we're walking a really fine line here. I'd like to stick to the subject here. Anything that has to do with
The facts.
Mr. Goodall
Okay, let me go down this.
having a different memory of what his conversation with Sam Mamet was.
Okay, well, let me go down and skip a...
I think it's largely irrelevant, too.
That's fine. His complaint says that I not speak with one voice. That is not correct. Even though I have some reservation about the recreational marijuana, I vote consistently with majority of many things that council has voted on. He also states that I was warned and acting on my own. I believe that I was a CML representative. I was not warned. I referred back to the work session of May 18, 2018. There was no warning given to me or anyone else in regard to, and we all agreed to be more open. Even if there was a warning, I question if it could be done in a work session. Councilman Goodall possibly contacted other council members that he was going to file this ethics violation. Okay? I'm not sure that's true.
We're going afield.
Okay, let's go. Let me just finish up here. Let me just finish up here. This complaint is not an ethics violation, only a communication issue which will be corrected. The question I have for you is, have I done anything to damage the integrity of Trinidad? Am I committed to doing the job of mayor? I spoke with one voice. I was not given an official warning. Therefore, I ask you to dismiss this ethics complaint. You want a copy of this?
Sure. Do you have copies for all?
No, I just have one right in here.
This is the email.
Yes, that's the email from Sam Abbott.
Yeah, I think the email is relevant. I mean, that's something, assuming it's not fraudulent.
Right.
It is akin to testimony in this.
Right, and there was conversation with Sam then,
Right.
yeah, right.
But recounting conversations is not, and,
Can I speak real quickly, because he said some things about me that I would like to be able to rebut?
let me get advice from
Wait.
our parliamentarian.
Okay, well, the
You want me to
mayor,
get back up if you have any questions?
please, that will be first, and I will address it. But,
That's whatever.
Mayor Pro Tem, I believe now it's appropriate for council to ask
Ask
questions.
questions, yes, Mr. Matei.
I do have questions.
You know, actually, Councilman Goodall, and I'm sorry, should be allowed to cross-examine first, if you have questions of the mayor.
Yeah, I don't think a witness can cross-examine a defendant, is that correct?
He's not a witness, he's.
No, I'm saying,
He's a
I'm responding to Carlos's,
Yeah.
Mr. Lopez's request. to ask-
Right, well, I would say first you get questions of the mayor, first by the other party,
let's
then
just
by
do that.
council, exactly.
Let's just-
Then I will have
Put
advice.
one foot in front of the other.
Where to start here? So give me just, I'm trying to process
That's fine.
some of the
I understand.
comments
It's
that were
important
given
matter.
here. I should have been writing down. So, when you come to my place of business and residence, we had a conversation about filing the complaint.
Yes, I did.
Do you recall that conversation?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall your statements to me why I should not file a complaint?
Other than I just said that that it was a communication issue and it was not an actual ethical violation.
Excuse me, can you speak into the microphone? I think that'll help.
That it was a communication issue and not an ethical violation.
So during that conversation that you wanted to bring up and talk about me keeping my word, was it not true the only thing in that conversation between me and you was you explained to me about how bad this would be for everybody else, and it never addressed the actual violations that you had been accused of?
I had not been accused of the actual violation other than you said that I had been warned and that was it.
So, to address your comments about me keeping my word about the proceeding with filing this violation, and one of the main reasons it was filed, as per our conversation that day, the only conversation we had between me and you was
It's got
not
it in the form of a question. This is not a time to make testimony.
correct. That's why I was trying to figure your.
And it can't be jeopardy either. It's
Correct.
a reasonably succinct question.
Is it not true that the only conversation we had that day was you talking about how it would be bad for everybody else but you?
Yes, I do remember saying that it was not a good idea because the ethics violations charges were detrimental, like I mentioned in my opening statements. That, it divides council and it divides community.
Is that what you said to Mr. Goodall? Please
Yes, I
restrict
did.
yourself to that.
That is, you didn't explain, okay. In that conversation, is it not true the only person you said it would be bad for would be for Councilman Lopez, not for you, not for the community?
I did mention that it would be, hurtful to Mr. Lopez because of the things that he did say to me and the reasons why I did not sign his letter of intent, and I did explain that to you.
I have no further questions.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Questions from the council?
Mr. Matei?
I do. You several times have mentioned that it's a matter of communication rather than an ethics violation. Do I understand you
Yes.
correctly? Okay, you also mentioned that large improprieties are what come to mind when one thinks about an ethics violation, embezzlement, that sort of stuff. And I think I concur with you. Do I understand you?
Yes.
Okay, how is before I ask you, what did you hope to accomplish by not disclosing your ballot?
You know,
What was going on in your mind when you thought it was a good idea to not share that?
Okay. Anytime that a ballot is placed in front of me, whether it's a municipality ballot, you know, a ballot of any sort, I've always taken it as a very personal thing. And the other thing is, like I said, there were other people and there were 4 categories, I believe, that were on that ballot question. There were other people that were on that ballot, and by them seeing it, they might not have agreed with the person that I thought would be a good representative in that particular category.
You say it was a personal thing, and it has been your long-standing opinion that a ballot is a personal issue.
Yes.
Do you agree, though, that when you were there representing the city council of the city of Trinidad, nobody could really care what your personal opinion was? Your opinion was to represent the interests of this city as we sent you forth as our representative. Do you agree?
I agree.
And do you agree that in the absence of you being specifically commanded to exercise this action, then it fell within the prerogative or the purview of the 3 of you there in attendance to make a compromised decision as to how you were going to vote?
Well, if like I mentioned in my thing, it says either or by the representative.
It says either you sent as a representative, or in the absence of that happening, which it didn't happen, then by virtue of a meeting of the minds of those then and there present. And you took it upon yourself to act individually and of your own accord.
Yes, I did.
Okay?
I wish I would have been given more instruction from CML.
Well, you profess to be the person on the board at CML. How is it you don't know?
I was never given any information.
Okay, and 3 times I counted you say that you assumed.
Yes.
You can't assume. You gotta know. Okay? You know what happens when you break down the word assume. Okay, be that as it may, you did not sign the petition here in support of Councilman Lopez. Were you being personally punitive for not doing that?
It was because of those 2 reasons that I mentioned.
Okay, I understand that. Did you make it a personal issue to not disclose your vote to them?
No.
But you did so, as I'm understanding your question, your answer, because it was a personal thing and you didn't feel like you had a responsibility to share.
I felt like I didn't have to share it with them because I was the representative, which, like I said, I thought I was.
You wrongfully assumed that you were the representative.
Right.
Fall on your sword here.
Right.
Okay? Were you, in this entire presentation, you made reference to a lot of things, and you were going to one that I brought up. And I think the whole issue, my next question is, you talk about large-scale improprieties being the essence of a true ethics violation, and I agree. But at the same time, do you not agree that trust and camaraderie between members of a board or a representative at a convention is also a big deal?
Sure, yeah. I agree in that regard.
Thank you. How you talk about presenting a unified front to the people in Denver, and you suffer a great deal of embarrassment, as I understood your statement, having Denver know about you being in that position where you now stand. Is that true?
It's true.
Okay. Then how unifying were your actions to represent Trinidad in a united front when you chose to take it upon yourself to hold that ballot unto yourself?
You're making more of a statement than a question.
I'm asking, okay, my question is, how did you think it was unifying of council to maintain that ballot in your sole possession?
Well, I think if you go back to, like I said, I leaned over and I told Councilman Lopez that I was going to vote for him, which I did. You know, I go on my word. Whenever I say something, my word, I believe, is something that I rely on every day of my life. And when I leaned over and I told Councilman Lopez I would vote for him, I followed through with that.
Do you see how those in attendance could be suspect of your motivation because you didn't show your ballot prior to submitting it?
Then they would be questioning my...
That's not what I asked you. Do you understand
I can understand
how they could be
not...
suspect of what your actions
yes,
were?
Yes, I can
Thank you.
understand that
I'm done.
taking question. Sure.
I just have one question.
Sure.
You did not know ahead of time the procedure for filing that ballot?
Matter of fact, I've been on the policy committee for 1 year, Actually, almost not quite a year, because the first meeting I attended, I believe, was in September. So I was never given any, and never received any instructions about any of this. The instructions that we received was the day of the voting procedure.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
When you join other boards, do you typically read the bylaws?
Typically, yes.
Okay, is there a reason why you didn't read the bylaws here?
I don't, to be honest with you, I never asked for them, and they was never given to me. Anytime I attended, I think 2 or 3 meetings at CML, and they were always concerning policy procedures and things that were going on in the entire state. But there was nothing ever given to me in regard to the CML policies, and like I said, it's my figure that I never requested.
Fair enough. And I've made a mistake. You have an opportunity to question Mr. Rico first.
We're being conducted here. I'm just gonna keep my questions
Fair enough.
and move forward.
Okay,
That's fine.
Is it true that, as you interpret this bylaw section, that the bylaws would say that all attending council members, in the absence of you being designated in some official action by city council, that whether or not you voted for Mr. Lopez, they should have had a say in the other
Yes.
books that were passed?
Yeah, if I was not there,
So
then.
that's clear to you now.
That's
So
clear.
make sure, so you're stipulating that that is the case.
That is the case.
You broke the CML bylaws. Okay. Is that correct?
Not
You're
knowingly, yes.
stipulating that?
I'm stipulating that, not knowingly that I did
It's-
break it, yes.
But we all know what ignorance of the law gets you. And that's a statement, I'm sorry to have made it. Did you vote for Mr. Lopez?
Yes, I
Under
did.
oath? Did you cast any did you know that there were controversies with the other votes you were casting?
I'm not sure what you mean by.
Well, in other words,
No,
did you withhold consensus or withhold showing the other people you had voted for because you thought they might object?
That was my reason, yes.
That
They
was
might,
your reason.
that
You thought they might
they might
object.
object to some of the people that, or the other people and the other 3 categories. Because there were 4 categories, and you had to select, in some cases 2, some cases 1.
But the bylaws clearly say that they should have had a say. Because you
That's
weren't
true.
officially
It
designated.
does say that. Well, that's the thing, it's after the fact that I was aware of.
Okay, I'm trying to keep this on focus.
As a matter of fact, one of the things that I will mention is that after this whole thing came upon us, I asked Audra if she had ever received any kind of information concerning that. And she said she could never remember receiving anything.
Did you have reason to believe that either Mr. Goodall or Councilman Goodall or Councilman Lopez would have objected to the other people who voted?
I don't know. You don't know.
Okay.
Because he said that he had talked to some of the other people that were running, and they might have had an objection. I couldn't tell for sure.
Can you tell us who you voted for? Is that relevant?
The other 3 I don't remember.
It's really not relevant. Respectfully, I don't believe it is relevant.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry.
When you said you wanted to keep the ballot to yourself, that was motivated by some sense of an Australian ballot that you felt you were entitled to, another secrecy of the vote.
You're right.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anything else, Mayor?
Nothing else.
Any other witnesses for you, Mayor? Okay. So if you would please, proceed, thank you. So it has been suggested, the possibility of rebuttal testimony. And a rebuttal testimony isn't normally allowed. I know I don't have it in my procedural outline, but rebuttal testimony is allowed, as long as you also allow for some rebuttal from the mayor. So if Councilman Goodall would like to present rebuttal testimony, I do think you should allow him to do that. But again, the mayor will be allowed to rebut the rebuttal testimony. That's
Mr.
right.
Goodall, would you like to rebut?
to save time, I think that we've covered everything. There's no need to go to, well, I didn't say that and this is not how that went. I don't think that is gonna benefit any of us or the decisions that'll be rendered here today.
Good.
Do we move to closing arguments? now?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. The evidence.
Now you can go beyond facts
Correct.
and you can say whatever you want,
Got it.
pretty much, as long as
That's
it's
correct.
relevant to this complaint.
That's right, these are now closing
Correct.
statements and arguments, please.
So, when I run for the office of city council, it was always my full intention to represent council with transparency. I do not take into consideration what Denver or any other individual may think about our process of going on here and me trying to represent the people that elected me in this town. I move forward when I think there is something wrong, and I will be in admiration of things, accomplishments that we achieve, but I will never shy down from calling somebody when they are wrong because I may be afraid of what someone in Denver or an investor or anyone else may have on our community down here and our growth. My whole goal here is to make sure that we stay transparent, and that is what we show to the people that elected us here. This process is not by any means meant to put anybody down, but it is just in the purest form to show our transparency that we will take care of our problems here. And that's why they elected us to take care of our problems. That's why we're here, so that the people of this community, like they've had to do before because council would not take care of matters, won't have to do that again. We'll deal with that. That is my motivation for filing this complaint, so that we can put an end to this process of us not working together as one unit here. And there are no other hidden agendas that I may have or bad feelings towards anybody. This town has never been represented by a mayor in the 27 years I have lived here like it has been now. But that does not grant anybody privileges to speak on their own and represent the 7 of us with one voice. It has to be the 7 of us consensus, and then the mayor goes forth with that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Closing arguments, Mr. Rico?
It's really surprising me that Mr. Goodall said that I'm the best mayor he's seen during his time here in Trinidad. But yet he's willing to go ahead and bring forth this ethics violation. And like I mentioned earlier, this is not an ethics violation. This is a communications issue. When I found out that he was going to file this violation, I went and I talked to him. I was truthful with him. I think if he really believed that I was a good mayor, I was being truthful, and I told him that I had voted for Mr. Lopez, and I think that he should have been able to take that for my word. You know, our word in this council, every one of us, should be gold. And I really believe, I know in my heart who I voted for. I wish I could pull out that ballot. I wish I could pull out that provisional ballot that was given to you to show you that I did. So there's got to be a different way to settle some of these issues going forward. And I think, like I mentioned in my opening statement earlier, is that ethics violations create divisions in city council, amongst city council members, sometimes even amongst staff, the community, and that's not good. That being said, and I'll go ahead and I'll rest with that. And I ask that you dismiss this complaint, because I just don't feel like it really follows all the rules of the ethics violations.
Thank you, Mr. Rico. And now, do we have a motion to either proceed with sanctions or dismiss?
And for the record, that does close the testimony and the evidence portion of the hearing.
Thank you, Ross.
Absolutely. So,
Do we have a motion?
I move that we dismiss the ethics violation.
Do we have a second?
dies, I believe, for lack of a
It
second.
dies for lack of a second. By the way, I'm not allowed to vote either way.
Not to move or second.
Not to move or second,
Right.
exactly. Do we have a motion to proceed towards sanctions?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
And it's actually a motion to say that the complaint has been proven by
Or
proponents.
is preponderance of evidence?
Yes.
Is there no opportunity to discuss?
There will be
After
a
a second
discussion,
is
yeah.
made to the motion, then you will be allowed to discuss. So there's been a
And then
motion.
beyond that,
Then you will have a vote. So there's been a motion. If there's a second, you will be allowed to discuss, and then there will be a vote.
If there's no second, we're in the
then
aisle.
I will
Correct.
second his motion
Enough.
in the interest of a discussion.
Understood, thank you. Would you like to start, or would you like to start?
That's okay, starting, and go.
I believe that section 4, speak with one voice, probably doesn't apply. There's little doubt in my mind that applies, but of the several options, I think a loose term in section number 2 speaks to honesty and respect for the dignity of each individual should be reflected in every word or action taken by council members. And that one probably is weak, but it has more applicability here to the facts as have been presented by the complainant and the defendant. In that, I subscribe to what the mayor says. There was a failure to communicate, in the words of Cool Hand Luke, but at the same time, he can't have it all ways. I'm on the executive board, or I'm on this panel, and I'm on that panel. Yes, when it serves is good. But then, no, I didn't know that. Well, you can't have it both ways. I should do this because I'm on this committee, but I don't know what the rules are, so I'm excused. It doesn't work that way, as you suggest, Madam Chairperson, that he should have been aware. I think that the issue here, more than anything, is the secrecy in the mayor trying to maintain personal possession of a ballot that he thought is his personal property. When the truth of the matter is, he was a representative vote of this council, and certainly those 3 in attendance, much like a political convention. The people of Colorado cast their 6 votes for. There's a meeting of the minds of who they're going to vote for. And likewise, that should have applied here. And I think, okay, so the mayor thought, well, it's mine to do. What's the big deal in showing the other 2 members how you voted? I don't agree that there probably was a true bona fide ethics violation, as he defines ethics, being a substantive, I think, or a large impropriety. But at the same time, as I was trying to make my point earlier, it is an impropriety to not have the trust and confidence of your other members when you intentionally conceal information from them. And to the mayor's point, I was appointed to council a few years ago when it was rife with suspicion, discord, and hostility, brought on, in my opinion, by self-serving individual personal agenda. Since then, we as a council have committed ourselves to work in relative harmony and a cooperative spirit as a single unit for the greater good of the city and the citizens we represent. I fear that rogue actions will cause us to regress to that former dysfunctional self, which will be ultimately detrimental to that which we all hold so dear to our hearts. And my point being is, granted, there was perhaps not a true and bona fide ethics violation, which in my mind are very limiting anyway, and they were made for a specific purpose when this was drafted at the request of Councilwoman Fletcher at the time.
That's right.
Okay, but they're not all encompassing. We can't hold it in the same regard as the founders hold the Constitution, because it's not that broad. But at the same time, the point I'm trying to make is we could not and should not tolerate autocratic behavior and decisions which usurp the authority and the integrity of the council and violate the trust instilled in us by the voters. And I could really care what the folks in Denver think. Now, I realize we are dependent on the good, positive vibes that are going on. But at the same time, don't hang your hat on that if you're not gonna subscribe to that in all matters. And in my opinion, the mayor, this is one in a series of autocratic behaviors that he chooses to exercise force and authority undo his position. And I guess when we come to vote, I probably am going to say, no, there was not an ethics violation in this case. But I want seriously to make the point that this is not 8th grade study hall, and he's not the hall monitor. And that's all I have to say about this.
Thank you. Ms. Griego?
He's a hard act to follow. Well, I guess it's no surprise the way I feel about this issue. I've been reading the definition of ethics over and over and over again, and it questions one's moral character. I've known Mayor Rico all my life, and I've worked with him very well over the past maybe 9 months since I was elected to this council. And I don't believe that Mayor Rico did this intentionally. As stated by Councilman Goodall, Councilman Lopez, and the mayor himself, none of them knew the exact procedure. None of us here on council knew, or we would have directed them, hey, you're our representatives, this is what we want you to do. It's lack of communication. It was a mistake. And I beg all of you, whoever hasn't ever made a mistake on this dais,
Look
yeah.
at me.
Well,
You're
no.
looking directly at me like, yeah, Mr. Brown.
I'm looking at you.
This is
I'm just saying, it was a mistake. It was a miscommunication. If anything, it was a violation of the rules for CML. I don't care what CML did. I just understand. I just want you to know that I asked Mayor Rico. I heard about this text, and I wanted to know, because I wanted to know. I had reservations about signing that letter. And I wanted to know what was in that text, because it would prove to me what kind of man Councilman Lopez was. And he said, no, I'm not going to show you. You make up your mind.
This isn't a referendum on
It
Carlos's
is. No,
character.
I know, I'm just telling you. I'm just trying to give you, anyway, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Councilwoman Griego. Mr. Bonato?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I've probably been sitting on this council for longer than most of these other people have been sitting on council. And going through council and learning what was going on, I learned from some good mayors. And I learned a lot of good from a lot of good councilors. And the first thing they taught me before I even sat in this chair was to know your charter. Okay. By saying that, you know, Mr. Mayor Rico said, well, I didn't know about this at the CML. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Rico. If you're sitting on any type of board, you better know the bylaws of what's going on. Just like you should know this city charter, in which I don't think you know either one of them. So the complaint to me, I think would have to stand, because I believe Mr. Councilman Goodall has a complaint as an ethical violation. There's a lot of definitions for ethics, but I firmly believe that this should have been more transparent between them. Mr. Rico should have known what the bylaws were, and that's the most important thing to learn first. If you don't know the charter, if you don't know the bylaws of all the boards, I'm gonna say all the boards you sit on, then you shouldn't be sitting on those boards, because that's the first thing you learn. And I'm saying that as a councilman that sat here for a number of years, and that's all I have to say.
Fair enough, thank you. I'd just like to thank council for working through all of this. These are difficult issues, and it's obvious to me as I hear you speak that you're giving very careful consideration to both sides here. If I were to paraphrase your comments, Mr. Matei, those would be my own, okay? Which is something wrong happened here. There's no question in my mind something wrong happened here. But, and I'm gonna make it real simple, it is a violation of the CML bylaws. And I think your ethics complaint should be at the CML level. Maybe they have an ethics violation. I don't know. The issue is maybe we should revise this code to account for a transparency provision that is meaningful other than just in the whereas clauses of the framework. But there's nothing guiding, let me phrase it a different way. To quote Councilwoman Griego, and now you can see the thoughts are coming faster than the mouth can move. Ethics complaints are very serious matters, and they affect someone's reputation. And I don't think we can make it up as we go. We can't just say, I know one when I spot one. I know an ethics violation when I see one. I mean, then you're on a slippery slope to not a democracy, okay? And for that reason, I am inclined, and I'll telegraph what my vote is going to be. If I believe that there was a provision in this code that was violated, I would, in a heartbeat, vote for sanctions or to proceed to the sanctions level. There is not, and I think a man's reputation, no one's ever going to remember what the allegations were or what the counter arguments were. All they're going to say is ethics violation, black mark on your soul. And I don't think we can make that designation up as we go. So that's all I have to say. I have a lot more to say. And I don't want to minimize the fact that I think you let us down in some respect, Mr. Mayor, by not understanding the bylaws and by not involving them. The issue is not whether you voted for Mr. Lopez or not. The issue is whether you obeyed the bylaws of CML, and then, even if you did vote for it, that doesn't change the fact that they should have been involved in voting for the other board members. And I think that should be instinctual, but I'm not here to lecture anyone. I do not believe there's an ethics violation here. And I would like to request, I guess maybe this has to come from council's direction generally, that this be given a good look at. And there's got to be a model code somewhere that will prevent us from being in this sticky wicket. Okay?
Sure. And there have been a number of council people that have said that while this has been pending, that they'd like to have a rewrite of the ethics code.
Yeah, I think Ms. Fletcher did an excellent job because we didn't have much of anything before.
Right, and she wanted that provision plugged into the existing code, and that's what was done. Yeah.
All right, so now do we proceed to a vote on the
Correct.
motion which was seconded?
That's correct.
All right, Ms. Lopez, would you take a vote?
What are we doing here? Yes, says vote, yes, to proceed.
There was a motion to proceed to the next stage, to find that there was a preponderance of evidence that the allegation that was made indeed happened.
And there was a second on that.
And there was a second. We've had our discussion. Now, the discussion is, well, it's an important matter. If anyone else would like to say more, we can hold off going to a vote.
Is it a better way to say that the simple question we're calling now, the question being called is, did an ethics violation occur? Yes or no?
I think that's exactly right.
Okay,
I
in
think
the
that's an
interest of
important
simplification.
point.
I agree.
We're not voting on whether we think something right or wrong happened.
That's
The
right.
vote is on whether the specific allegation, and I hate to make this a technicality, we're gonna change this thing if I.
Right, but this is what we're working with now.
But this is what we're working with now.
Right,
And ethics violations travel with somebody. So, is everyone ready to move to a vote?
I am.
Bernardo,
Yes.
Griego,
No.
Matei,
No.
Miles.
No.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Goodall, Mr. Lopez. I will be calling this hearing to a close, and I will be recusing myself as I have been identified as a fact witness in the next hearing.
Correct.
And as I understand it, I can be called by either the plaintiff or the defendant as a fact witness. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to a close. And I'll turn the gavel over to Mr. McKay.
Thank you. May we have a recess of?
Yeah, that's very.
Recess. Let's,
How long we got?
take-
5 minutes?
let's come back, let's reconvene at 10 after 5. We'll leave it short of 15 minutes.
Okay. Presiding officers.